Glenn Wong, obviously very well.
course.
So Glenn is
Dear
one of the,
friends.
he's a retired former chair of sport management, and great guy, and one of the strictest guys I know. And Paula, my kids grew up with his oldest son, Glenn Jr., and my son Anthony are the same age, and his younger son Gary and my son Nicholas are a year apart. So we grew up coaching, the kids grew up with, and I guess I grew up as a parent and a coach, coaching with Glenn. And Glenn was a D3 All-American, and back when there were something like 10 or 15 rounds of the NBA draft. He got drafted by the NBA, turned him down for law school, and then became just this amazing professional. But his wife, Paula, would tell the story that class started at 8:30. He locked the door, and anybody that didn't make it, they couldn't get in.
I used to put the garbage cans.
And then Glenn brought that sense of strictness to sports that we had. And for you athletes in here, and anybody who's a kid, you love some structure in your life. Because otherwise you're just kind of free-flowing, you're not getting any done. And so Glenn was like, when I blow the whistle, the ball stopped bouncing. When I blow the whistle again, you sprint to me. It was like, wow, I'm going to learn something from this guy. And then at one point, my younger son, I asked Nicholas, I go, you don't like it when Glenn yells at you, do you? He goes, I don't like it when Glenn looks at me.
He's now a law professor at Arizona State.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but he's getting all sorts of awards.
Yeah. One of the, and
In sports law.
we were the perfect combination because he was quiet, soft-spoken, and rigid, and I was like really I could get any kid to do anything. Anyway, so today's talk, I'm actually getting a video to thank Alec in the back. A few years ago, somebody asked me to join their motivational speakers bureau. And it had to do with something you're going to see a little bit about it because I was at the Boston Marathon bomb site. And then they said, but we need a video clip of you. I was like, oh, I've never had a video clip of me, so obviously this is my highlight. I never get nervous with this. So today's talk, and I pace, I mean, you're on your
I got you.
So today's topic is what shapes your life. Because, right now I just turned 60 this year, like a milestone, And every day something's happening to me that changes my life. And you're in your 20s. And every day things are going to happen to you that either shapes or changes your life, some of which you're aware of and some of which you're not. And I think the older you get, the more appreciative you are of the things that happen because, frankly, the day may come, the next day you may not be there to appreciate what's going on. So I'm going to start, this is in part of health class, with a huge public health problem, which is kind of what drove me to do some things I've done. There's a huge public health problem, and it's this. This is the obesification of America. It's gotten to where 33% of adults are obese. Now it's crept up to kids are 17 to 18% of children are obese, and so tell me, this can be interactive, so I can ask questions. What do I love about this slide? What's he doing? He's exercising. He's working out. He's being active. He's trying to make a difference. I love it. There's all sorts of body types, and I'm a sports guy. If everybody was built like a wide receiver, we wouldn't have linemen. Okay, so you can be fit and big. You don't have to be skinny. We don't have to be warped by this Photoshop model of somebody on the front of a fitness magazine. You can be fit and active and not look like that. So this guy's really working. What I don't like about that, they didn't go up to that counter and buy that themselves. The parents did. So the behaviors start at the top and work their way down, and then the other. So fact-wise, to childhood obesity, if you look in the last 30 years, childhood obesity has tripled. So ages 6 to 11 in 1980 was 7%, 12 to 19 was 5% in 1980. In 2008, it went up to 20%, 6 to 11, and 12 to 19, 18%. And basically, in general, right now, 17% at ages 2 to 19 are obese. And this is the first generation of 10-year-olds that are going to live 5 years less than their parents. So every few years we look at it and say, wow, this is great. We're doing something right with public health and health in America, and we're living longer. We're doing this, but not now. If you've got little siblings or nieces or nephews, unless we can change that culture, they're going to live less than their parents. So also, sitting, we end up, are you guys business people? How many people are going to go up get that Wall Street job? When you get that Wall Street job, you're going to live someplace that's Manhattan's a long, expensive place to live. You're going to commute an hour in, sit on the train. You're going to work 8 to 12 hours for somebody else, making money for somebody else, really climbing that ladder, and you're going to get on that train. So you're going to probably sit 14 hours a day. You might already be sitting 14 hours a day.
Unless you have a standing room desk.
Well, I have a whole talk. This isn't the talk, but I can give you, if you have all morning, I can give you the is sitting the new smoking topic. So, quite funny we should ask, is sitting the new smoking? So we're looking at people that sit so much in sedentary lifestyles and say, you know, people get heart attacks more, they get diabetes more, they get colon cancer more, they get breast cancer more. So there's that link, and some of it's proven and some of it's not, but the link is we just become people that sit around too much and don't eat well. Sometimes in the name of bad habits, like those kids eating McDonald's, or sometimes in the name of good professional habits, like how hard you work to get to the next stage that you're going to go to. So what I want to kind of talk about through the talk is life-shaping events from my standpoint, for me, make you think about your life-shaping events, inspiring people to move, and lastly, to find the greatness in every day. Because every day you can find something great about your life. So in this summer, I had a life-changing summer. And I had a good life. And I don't know if I needed my life to change, but it did. I wrote this book in 2012 called Henry Gets Moving, to inspire kids to get off the couch to move into play, with the goal of a trickle-up effect of kids love this character, that they read the book to their parents, they want to be like Henry, and they play, their parents would play with them, and it would just inspire more people to get moving and to be healthy. And I've always wanted to, I had a girlfriend in college who, a few years older than me, had always wanted to ride a bike cross country. Put that bug in my ear, always wanted to ride cross country. I was like 20 when I was. And then we broke up, blah, 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 I never rode a bike cross country. A lot of bike adventures, but so I had on my bucket list, one of these days I want to do a cross country bike ride. And I said, I'll do it when I retire. But I love my job so much, I don't know if I'm going to retire. So it's like, you're really old, going to ride a bike cross country. I said, I'll do it when I'm 60, it's a good round number. So last year in the late fall, around January, it was like, wait a minute, there's something bad happens between now and then. It's a pretty negative way to think. What do we do now? So anyway, we made it happen. This is my buddy Roger that I did it with. I have some part of my great job is I not only take care of you at Health Services and get to be on sports field and know the athletes real well and be part of that, but I have patients like Roger, who when I started 20 years ago, I had all these guys that were really active and fit. They wanted a sports doctor to be their doctor. So we've kind of aged together, and so his patient has become a very good friend, and we did the 4,000 miles together, and it was wonderful. So that's the book, and if I end early, unlikely, I'll read the book to you because I have it on PowerPoint as well. So anyhow, this was our route. We started in the coast of Oregon, and we rode down the coast for about 50 miles, and we started cutting across Oregon through here, and through Idaho, up to Montana, down through Wyoming, into southern Colorado, and then across Nebraska, across Iowa, across Illinois, across Indiana, across Ohio, across New York, into Massachusetts, and just to bag another state, we got about a half a mile of Connecticut, and then we finished 10 weeks later. So, and had the most amazing things that I'm going to share with you. So, back, we're going to rewind and just to talk about those life-shaping events. First off, I'm a sports guy, so I put things in sports analogies. So I put my life in quarters. So, I'm 60, roughly lifespan right now is still around 80. Hopefully my fourth quarter doesn't end abruptly because, I'm a fourth quarter guy. I got a lot of energy. I want to keep playing. but I'll be happy from the things that I've had. So I want to lead you through the first 3 quarters. This is a picture of me and Dave, and this is Trey, if you remember Trey. I tell people that my job in sports is somebody goes down on the field, it's the job of the athletic trainers to go assess it first, and I let them do it. I only come onto the field or the court for 2 reasons. A, if it's the dead look, and Trey ran into a pick, went down, looked dead, so Dave ran off the court. I had to go down the stairs, run onto the court, and he was fine. Or I also do if it's on national TV, because I got friends and family around the country that are watching it. And on one of my bike rides a few years ago, I met this woman from Wisconsin named Leah, and we played Wisconsin 4 years ago. So I taped a sign on my back that said, "Hi, Leah," and more of a joke. I ran onto the field way too many times that day because we were playing Wisconsin. And that's when I learned that the Las Vegas odds makers are really smart. We were 52-point underdogs, and we lost 52-0. So I thought, man, you're going to bet, just look what Vegas is. Whatever Vegas says, follow them. So anyway, right about the time of your age, I'm a sophomore in college. I'm going back to school, and I get this gal who was kind of like when I was a freshman, she was when I was in high school, she was at University of California, Davis. I grew up in California. And she gave me a tour around, and I ended up going to UC Davis, which is one of the California system public universities. Ironically, there's West Coast mentality and East Coast mentality and of academic snobbery of you got to go to the right private school, out here. And I'm really a public school guy. Explain the med school difference in a minute. But I got into Stanford too, and I just looked at the numbers and said, wow, I can go to Davis for 4 years, and I can go to Stanford for 2 years for the same price. I bet I can do a lot of cool things by going to Davis. So I went to Davis. And I wouldn't be here wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for not going to Stanford. So when you look at other institutions and other people tell you you need to go to this one because it sounds better, no, they're not always right. So anyway, this gal who was my kind of big sister, I started at Davis my first year and never saw her. Anyway, then go back my second year and I run into her. Her name was Katie Hennessy. And she said, I just got back from my junior year abroad. It's the best thing I've ever done. It's changed my life. Promise me you will at least go to the Education Abroad office and talk to them about the programs they have. So I did, and I ended up going. And this is Edinburgh Castle in Scotland. And I spent a year in Edinburgh, and I was gone for the whole year. And then we stayed 2 weeks and traveled a little bit for 2 weeks. I went over there with a group, and then at Christmas time I traveled with the ski club to Switzerland, and I wanted to just travel more, so they had this nice 2-week trip. And so I was going to meet another friend, my buddy who was going to Stanford, and he was doing the Stanford Abroad program in Paris, hitchhiked to Paris from Switzerland, and that's back when hitchhiking was safe, and which you can't do anymore, which is really a shame, because you meet some really interesting people. We had one of the worst hitchhiking days of anybody's career, in the snow on the long road. It looked like a major road on the highway on the map, but it wasn't. I remember getting in this car. Finally, I get picked up by this guy, a few years older than me, with lots of presents in the back, and he's driving to Paris. I tell him where I'm going to go. Oh, that's very close to where I'm going. It's like, bonus, got the best ride ever. Then he says something like, I think Christmas, you got pretty good English, Christmas is so stupid. We're supposed to be happy. We have all these presents. Sometimes I think it's so stupid, I just feel like driving my car into the other lane of traffic and dying. It's like, wow, not today, okay? So anyhow, we made it. That was that. And then springtime, did a ton of traveling. Summer, traveled a lot. Anything from hitchhiking to trains, to sleeping on trains, eating out of, and meeting tons of people. And that sort of shaped my life the most because, man, I still love traveling like that, which is just like the big kid in me, unlike the adult that most of people my age are. And the nicest hotels I stay at are when I'm traveling with teams. Otherwise, I subject my family to the places that I like to go, stay at. we were at the basketball team a year ago for the A10 tournament, and we stayed at the tip of Manhattan, and my room in the Ritz-Carlton had a view of the Statue of Liberty. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I go downstairs, and I'm a big beer guy, and I have this list of all the places that I want to go on a beer venture. And I go to the concierge, and they look at this and say, sir, I don't think you're going to be comfortable going to this place. And I said, ma'am, I'll be more comfortable there than I am in the Ritz-Carlton. So anyhow, and since I put that to mind, back before the term aerobics started, this is 1976, summer 76. I taught like one of the first aerobics class. I just simply made a flyer. I remember this days of rotary phones. You guys said this is like the antique source for you guys. Made a flyer, ran around to different places in the town of Sausalito, which is right across the bridge from San Francisco, taped it up on flag poles and on telephone poles and bulletin boards. Then I got about 10 adults, so I was 20 then, who wanted to learn about fitness. So I was a kinesiology major at UC Davis, which is a really good program there. Taught them everything I knew. We went from stretching to running to this to that. And so that was kind of, and no waivers, no legal stuff, no nothing in those days. And I charged them such a little amount of money. They were like, is this all it's going to cost? And I just needed enough money to have, enough to buy, baguettes in France. So anyhow, then I came back, and pre-meds at Davis, to some degree they are still now, were really cutthroat. My buddy Kevin, who is my roommate and one of my best friends, who also is now a doctor, went to this pre-med club meeting, and I couldn't go. He came back and said, man, I went to this meeting, and the person up there said, all right, how many of you in here have a boyfriend or girlfriend? People raised their hand and said, ha, this is a chemistry book. That's your new girlfriend or boyfriend. I said, man, I'm glad I didn't go that one. Then he goes, how many of you people want to get married? People raise their hand. You're going to be married to medicine. I said, that's not my kind of people. So I fought the whole time of I don't want to be a doctor. So I was going to either get a PhD in kinesiology or be a physical therapist or be something that just took me away from people like that. Because I didn't want to be around people like that. I didn't have any doctors that looked like they liked their careers. I had jobs summer jobs in a hospital as a physical therapy aide, and I would transport people around the hospital. I would scrub them. I do all sorts of aid stuff. But I had this band that I would play. And all these doctors in white coats with their residents and their entourage walking down the hallway, I would look everybody in the eye and say, hi, how you doing? How's your day going? And I'd try to look everybody in the eye, in the lowly 20-year-old aide with a wheelchair, to see if they would look at me and say hi. I played this game, and some of them could. But it was like, I'm not going to be that guy that thinks they're so important. And that was sort of the shape. So then I went to Scotland and had a choice. During spring, I could study for the MCATs, like everybody else is studying in the spring of their junior year. Or I could go to Greece, Italy, and Austria. So that was a good choice. I went to Greece, Italy, and Austria. And I came back and studied for the MCATs later. Because I got this advice on the stairs of the kinesiology lab by this guy, Bob Saperko, who was an MD that liked to do research. I still remember, so this is 1979. I'm on a stairwell here. He's about that much further going up the stairs. He was a good guy and a runner, and all the kinesiology people liked him. And I said, I'm thinking about getting a PhD. I don't really want to go to medical school, blah, 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 blah. And he said, I want to do health and fitness. And he said, that's great, but it seems like there are a lot of jobs now, but there may not be that many jobs in the future. You can spend a lot of time doing that. Because if you go to medical school and you don't like your boss, you can tell him to F off, and you can get another job. And I said, wow, I want to be able to tell my boss to F off. So that was a deciding moment. From that was the best advice that I ever got. And I put this slide up because I was one of those. I was in the kinesiology lab as a research assistant, and we would put people on the treadmill. And that's back in the days where computers weren't really like that. Computers were big wall banks of things. And so we were doing these studies on the cross-country team, and they were all eager to run as hard as they could to get the best VO2 max to beat their colleague runners. So I had this one guy on the treadmill, and you're supposed to start it slow, and then you're supposed to get the speed up, and you're supposed to sort of skate with it, and then hop on, holding onto the rails, and then start running. So eager, sort of forgot a couple steps. I turn around to turn the computer on, turn on the treadmill, and he just hops on it while it's going. And I look over at that kind of face, and I see panic in his eyes, because he's going backwards and he hasn't started running fast enough yet. And it was like in slow motion to me, and there's a wall right behind here where the treadmill is. And his chest leads here, EKG leads, almost individual. I could see them bing, 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 coming off of him as he's being ripped away from it. And the last thing he has control over is how hard he bites down on the mask. So he's just like, and then that flies out of his mouth in a spew of spit, and he falls down, and the treadmill is bouncing him back and forth against the wall. And that was really one of the highlights of my kinesiology career. Everybody in the lab's running, what happened? I think I'm going to get fired. He thinks he's really embarrassed because he's the only guy on the team that fell off the treadmill. But anyway, from then on, I decided to become a doctor. Because if I got fired from there, I'd still have a job. So, anyway, that's what I looked like in high school. And I put that up for two reasons, or multiple reasons. Because a lot of us go back and visit our high school just to pop in because you have a favorite teacher, you want to see them, you're in college. So one day, I hadn't been there in a couple of years. I just pop in and talk to a teacher of mine who says, wow, what are you doing next year? Our science teacher's taking a sabbatical. And so I got to take some time off. I was thinking about going to Lake Tahoe and working at a ski resort. So I got hired as a teacher and a coach. So I coached 3 sports. I led a bike. That was back when not as many lawsuit problems. So we had kids who led the ski club, scuba club, bike club. I took kids to Europe on a bike trip, and actually met my future wife there. And along the way, that year is when I was applying to medical school. I came down to 2 schools that I got into. I got into University of California at Irvine, state school, less expensive, Stanford versus UC Davis. I already made that decision, or USC. Southern California. Expensive at the time, probably about $8,000 at the time. That was expensive. It's all relative. And it came down to this. I looked at it, and UC Irvine gave you 6 weeks vacation at the end of your first year, and USC gave you 13 weeks vacation. No choice at all. I went to USC. So, and then with that, I took a public health service scholarship, and there's slides about that later, which paid for school. And so med school for me was free. So if any of you are going on to any type of degree, if you figure out a way, and while I was on the Education Abroad program at a meeting that I went to, I met this guy who traveled everywhere. I was just floored by him, fascinated by him. I said, how can you go to all these places? And he said, the key to travel is OPM. I said, OPM? Other people's money. So if you can find ways to have adventures on other people's money, bonus. So while I was in med school, I did a lot of traveling, not really on OPM, but sort of on OPM, because I had money saved up because I had this, because med school was free because of the scholarship that I had. And I did a lot of away rotations. And one year I went to New Zealand, Australia, and I traveled through Papua New Guinea. And Papua New Guinea, if you don't know, is the north of Australia. It's really remote. And I hitchhiked by airplane around. A buddy of mine had been to Papua New Guinea as a med student, and I liked his few years older than me. He said, yeah, I went to the main airport, and I just walked around and found pilots that were delivering things, and they took me around the country. So I tried doing that the first day. I just kept striking out. I met one pilot who said, I can't really do it here, we're down at the corporate office, but I'm flying these cargo flights in Mendi, this town in the Highlands. And if you meet me there on such and such date, I'd be happy to fly you around. So I said, great. I put that kind of in my memory. Walking around a little bit more, I get chased down by this guy, and now Melanesians are black, and they had been colonized by pretty bigoted white Australians, and backwards. And I look like that, and I get really dark. Okay, so the guy who was chasing me down was the wife of somebody that worked in the Air New Guinea office, and he heard, I hear you trying to go around. And he was actually an older student studying journalism at the University of New Guinea. He goes, "You need to stay with us." So randomly, he just grabs me. I go back to his house. I stay with him for a few days, and I'm really the first non-native that ever stepped foot through their door. And it was just amazing the generosity that they extended to me, partly for me being out there and wanting to just see what life was like there. Anyway, I met up with this guy. We went around. See all the clouds up there? At one point, he goes, "Yeah, now we're going to go through the Tari Gap." What's the Tari Gap? Well, it's this gap in the mountains. It's too high to fly around them, so we got to shoot the gap. And how do you see them? We're going through the clouds. Oh, I know where they are. I made it. And you see people like that just walking around. These are actually, if you look closely, these are penis cords. These are men covering the penises with penis cords. You could just wander. I would just go to a town, go to a hospital, try to find a doctor that was there, say, "Hi, I'm a med student. I tried to line up a rotation here, or an internship here, but I couldn't remember." These are the days where you had to send a stamped letter someplace. If it goes to a remote place like that, it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get there. Then they've got to respond to you whether they can take you or not, and then they mail it back to you. And then you got to get it approved. Since no internet, all that stuff was, so I could never arrange it. And then I get there, and they go, "Oh man, we could use some help. We could use some help. What are you doing? You want to stay here for 6 months?" So that actually didn't work because I was starting my 4th year, and I needed to get back because I had signed papers for the scholarship before I left. School was starting. And if it was the days of email, I could have just emailed back and made some changes, but I didn't. So I went back, and 2 things happened. I went in New Zealand and Australia. The woman who's my wife now, Arlene, traveled with me. So we went back, and we decided that we really cared for each other, and we kind of decided we're going to get married. So that happened kind of because I couldn't get the stint in Papua New Guinea. But what also happened, and I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't met 2 doctors who were former residents at UMass Worcester. So at med school, they got a family practice residencies, and one guy had been out of Worcester for a while. His name was Bill Alto. And one guy had just graduated in Barry Kay. And so I hung out with them for a few days in this town called Mendy up in the Highlands, and they said, "Oh, you got to look into residencies in Worcester." In California, I know nothing about Worcester. I never heard the word. I ended up in Worcester because I went to Papua New Guinea. I ended up here because I went to Worcester. So then, I'm in Worcester, had my training, residency. I got a pre-offer scholarship. And I had thought about my buddy Tony that was in Papua New Guinea years ago. He's way more adventurous than I am. He actually got foldable kayaks with his 2 brothers. They helicoptered into to the source of the Sepik River in Papua New Guinea and kayaked to the sea over like a 3-week period, surrounded by alligators and all sorts of stuff. So his adventure streak is a little bit higher. Anyhow, I was going to go work with him in this island called Saipan in the Pacific, but it turned out that for various reasons it wasn't going to work out, so I chose the Indian Health Service. So I was going to go work somewhere in the Indian Health Service, and I had worked as a med student in this place called Chinle, Arizona. Beautiful area. Looks like this is Monument Valley, just north of Chinle. And my buddy from residency was in a place called Mescalero. So I'm driving around setting up this interview junket, and Chinle is there, Mescalero is there, and I thought, God, that's too far to drive in a day. Wonder if there's any reservations halfway in between. And lo and behold, there was White River. And so we stopped for an interview in White River, which is the White River Apache Reservation. And this is White River Apache young woman, or girl becoming a woman. This is the summer after her first period, where this is basically the Southern debutante ball. Okay, this is her coming out ceremony, and this is a medicine man blessing her with cornflower. And I'm interviewing with the guy who turns out to be my first boss, Rick Caldwell, who's actually an ultramarathoner. And he goes, "Hey, what are you doing? Where there's a sunrise ceremony tomorrow, you can come to it." So I go the next day to a sunrise ceremony, and people just accept us as like, "Where are you from? This is great." And Apaches are allowing us this special moment. It's like, we have to come to it. So it was literally a spot on the map halfway between the two places that I went to, where I spent the next almost 5 years. Randomly, because I couldn't try that for one day. So a lot of challenges, fun medicine. If you like crazy stuff, like I do, great ER. Like a level 1 trauma center locally would be Baystate because they have in-house surgery. And so they can open up a skull, they can open up a chest, and the doctors are there, and they call it a level 1 ER because it feeds into those specialists. We were a level 4 hospital, meaning there was no other specialists in the hospital. We didn't have an operating room, but we saw the same stuff that level 1 ERs see. So my finished residency, I do what's called an advanced trauma life support class. Learn how, and for animal lovers, sorry about the next part, I learned to put a chest tube in a sheep in my workshop in June. Second week of July, I'm in White River putting a chest tube in a person who is about to die if I don't do that from a car accident. So all this crazy stuff would come in, and I would laugh with a friend. I lived on the res for 2 stints. I lived off the res for 3 years. My friend, we would drive in, and we'd work these overnight shifts, and she would say, "I get so nervous when I go to work at ER. I say prayers all the way down, and nothing bad will happen." I said, "Man, I blast rock music, I get pumped up, and I pray that something bad will come in that I've never seen before." I said, "I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but if something bad's going to happen, I want to be the one that's there." So she said a lot of prayers that didn't get answered. I said my prayers that got answered all the time. One day we were out at a Halloween party at my boss Rick's house, dressed up as every different costume. It was pretty nuts. We get this phone call that a van of volleyball players flipped and is on. There's multiple casualties and about 20 miles away. So all of us get in our cars in our costumes and drive to the scene of the accident to help stabilize the kids and bring them back to the hospital to give them care. It would have been a great video series. So I brought my kids back when they were, he was in second year in college and he was about to go to college. And this is what some of it looks like. And Anthony, my older one, said, "Man, what do people do here?" I said, "Well, blah, 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 blah." And I said, "Looks a lot," and he left when he was 5. I said, "Looks a lot," and he was about 19 then. I go, "Looks a lot different when you're an adult." And he goes, "Am I an adult now?" I said, "Well, you are." So from that move, went to Colorado and spent 5 years on the res and then 5 years in Grand Junction, Colorado. And I had a patient, that's not my patient, but I had a Colorado rancher that had elbow problems. He was doing stuff like that, lifting bales of hay. Okay? And I said, "You really need to go to physical therapy. You got to take care of this problem." And he said, "Doc, I'm self-employed. I can't afford." This is before, well, there's a lot of healthcare in transition. This is back in 1995. He goes, "I don't have insurance. I can barely pay for this visit. I can't pay for physical therapy. And I can't spend an hour away from my ranch driving down. It takes an hour to get to so once a week I work at this rural ranch community. I can't spend an hour driving to Grand Junction. And I can't spend an hour in physical therapy. That's 3 hours away from work. Just write it down. I'll do whatever you tell me to do." And that was the day, again, before internet, before patient education. There was a few pamphlets out there on how to take care of ankle sprains, how to take care of a couple of knee problems. So I thought, man, I should write a book. I should write a book that actually teaches, because what are we bad at as doctors? We're bad at communicating. And we're bad at the relationship that we have with people. We don't teach people how to take care of themselves. So back in 1990, that was 95, in 1997, I came here in the midst of working on this project, and my kid's best friend's dad, his name is Bruce Bynum, he's a former counselor at Hills North, said that he's written a few books, and he said, and he's this really cool black guy, he looks like a musician, he's like, I love Bruce, and my kids are best friends, and in his way of saying this, right book will set you free. So anyhow, I wrote this book, this is the third edition of it, called The Sports Medicine Patient Advisor, and it's got over 150 topics of how to take care of yourself. So if any of you ever see me at health services and I end up giving you handouts about your shoulder, your elbow, your knee, it's from the book that I wrote, which I never would have written unless that guy hadn't have said, just write it down. So anyway, from you, and most of you, because you're here, because you've been successful, and you're going to go on to the next places, and you'll be successful. And I didn't ever really fail at anything. And I, in Grand Junction, and they hired me to set up this, sports medicine in a small town. It just didn't work. It just, for some reason, just didn't work. And I had all my Worcester friends pulling me back, and so by being frustrated at something in Colorado is what landed me here. So I've been actually here since 1997, and it couldn't have been better. So I'm very thankful for various reasons it didn't get going in Colorado. This is my typical day. This is a gal who's I'm seeing for a neck problem. This is the teaching part. This is a fellow. That's an undergrad student who's shadowing. So kind of almost on any given day, there's people around me just because I like to teach. And then another life-changing thing, 2010 in January, there's an earthquake in Haiti. So my dad's from Haiti, and I got this pull of, I don't know, go. So we found this group to go with, and they actually didn't, some people hit the ground running. Earthquake, they have jobs, earthquake happens, I'm stopping whatever I'm going to do, I'm getting down there, and I've become friends with those people. It's amazing what they did and what they were able to do. But this was a devastating earthquake in this country. 1 million people, 9 million people in the country, 1 million of them were homeless because that's what their home looked like, and that's their new home. Killed 230 people, injured 300,000 people, and so I got there 9 weeks later, and that's the soccer field, which became a tent city because people had no safe place to be living. And so we would take care of essentially despair medicine, is what I called it then. I'd have people that would come in and it would be like, my belly hurts. Their belly hurts because they didn't have any food to eat. Their belly hurt because they were so traumatized because their family members died. I had one little boy who hadn't been sleeping, and why hasn't been sleeping? And people would come to get a fix for it. But the fix was that his best friend died in the house that they were both in, and he got out, and his best friend didn't. So the kids that were there were just amazing. This was our daily afternoon where we would go running with these kids, but it just really traumatized me. And the big existential picture of things, and I still can't come to grips with it, is like, why did I get to be that Haitian? Why was my dad that Haitian? Why was my dad not that Haitian? Why did I get to be descended and have the life that I did, and these kids don't? And it just, some people are good at going back to doing that, and I just have a really hard time. But what I did like to do, and what I enjoyed more than, Band-Aid medicine. And what I mean by Band-Aid medicine is you have big problems and you go for a short period of time to do some work, but when you're gone, kind of all you've done is put a Band-Aid on a big bleeding wound. And you haven't made a big change to the system. So a couple years after that, we went back to Haiti and did one of the most fun things ever, which was we taught people sports medicine. So a group of sports doctors went, and it was called the Teach the Teacher Conference. And this is when people were getting bored, I had them get off their seat because the person before me was sort of a boring lecture. They were nodding off. I said, "All right, everybody on your seat. All right, we're going to talk about ACL prevention. All right, because we were able to, we had 3 straight days of conferences. The first day we talked to med students and had close to 100 people. The next day we had like 60 doctors. And then we taught coaches because there's no athletic trainers there, and the coaches act like trainers. So we taught coaches about sports medicine. So I'm in the middle of starting a one-legged squat for checking people for quad strength for ACL prevention, and had everybody practice doing jump stops, and they were looking at me like, "What? You're gonna make me get out? I'm gonna make you guys get out of your seat. You're gonna make me get out of my seat?" But so it keeps people awake. So.
Do you speak Creole?
No. So I could have been raised. So my mom's Hispanic. Okay, get this. So typical America, 1950s. My parents moved to the San Francisco suburb. The first non-white family in the neighborhood to fit in and speak English. And then my sister had bad asthma, and some stupid doctor like me said, "That's a stress. Trying to teach them 2 languages is going to be a stress." I speak great English. I could have been raised speaking Spanish, French, Creole, and English. And I got raised as a melting pot American. So no. And everybody asked me, this is almost embarrassing. I know they hate me. So it's really embarrassing. But they love it because they love busting my chops. "You don't speak Creole? Blah, 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 blah." And then it's like, "Ooh, Rouzier?" Well, I know some cousins. So on this trip, I actually connected with a long-lost cousin. I should have a picture. With a long-lost cousin of mine. And it's, again, this dichotomy. You either have it or you don't. My relative, I'm working down in where there's sewage and garbage. I'm visiting my cousin who lives up here. And it's just who's got an armored car so his wife is safe, and a guard. Because that's how the life is. And it's, and I'm not sure where I'm comfortable. Like I said, I'm not comfortable in the Ritz-Carlton. So anyhow, I don't speak Creole, and that's my, that's how, those are part of my demons. So. Anyhow, but this was a wonderful trip. So anyway, fast forward to 2013, next week, 10 days from now, Boston Marathon. It's going to be my favorite thing to do. I'm the triage doctor for the Boston Marathon. I'm in front of a major medical tent. People come in, volunteers like you bring in patients, distressed runners, and I come up to you and I'm in front and I got to make an assessment whether you need to be in the tent at all or whether you need to be in the ICU part or how serious it is. And I got about 15 seconds. So I look at you and say, "Hey, I'm Dr. Rouzier, how you doing?" And I go, "What's your name?" And if you tell me, what's your name?
Destiny.
Destiny? You'll say, "Hi, I'm Destiny." I go, "What's up?" And you go, "Oh, I got this bad cramp. This nice kid picked me up in a wheelchair." I go, "Okay, well, you might go just drink some Gatorade and walk it off." Or I'll go up to her and I'll say, "Hey, I'm Dr. Rouzier, what's your name?" And she might say, "Oh, oh, oh." And then I realize, okay, she needs to be in the tent. So it's almost simple because you get either dramatically dehydrated, you overdrink water, and your sodium is too low, you get hyponatremic, or you get way too hot, you get hyperthermic or heat stroke. And those are the 3 things that make you act like that. And it's pretty damn simple, but they need the tent now, okay? Or they come in clutching their chest and they can't breathe, and they're having a heart attack. That actually happens less. One day, it was 2012, it was really hot, we were really busy, and at the end of the really long day, this old guy, probably my age, was sitting against the edge of this barrier by the tent. His wife had come over to help, to just be with him, and the director of a guy named Dr. Pierre Rouzier, great guy, was out in front with me. His job is to run around during the day, make sure that everything's okay, and then Aaron Bagish, who's a sports cardiologist at Harvard, he's in charge of the ICU part of the tent, and he comes out and we're surveying the scene, and we think we're done, okay? And then he said, wow, finally done, really busy. This guy slumps down and just collapses next to us and looks dead. Okay? If it was a UMass game, national TV, I'd have been on the court. Okay? Looks dead. There's a barrier here, and I've been in front the whole time, so I know. So Baggish and Democrat climbing over the barrier, and I go run into the tent, I realize, he's gonna need a wheelchair. I grab a wheelchair, come back out. Cardiologist goes, should we start now? Like, we're gonna start CPR coding him right now. I go, let's not do this to me. So, pick him up, put him in the wheelchair, and then it's like we're gonna go into the ICU part of the tent. And Aaron puts his feet over his shoulders. I'm running the wheelchair with my hands to the ground. So if somebody faints, he has to be a star if you do this. If somebody faints, thinks something bad happened, lie down, lift up their legs. The blood goes to their brain. Okay? So we're doing that, his feet are up like that. We get almost to the ICU part, and he goes, whoa, what just happened to me? Did I pass out or something? It's like, man, you're that close to getting CPR in Boylston Street. So, he didn't get CPR, and he woke up. Anyhow, this was a different story. This was the following year. The bomb goes off. I'm with one of my former fellows who just had a baby. It's a second child. We look at each other. We're not sure what it was. We're next to an electrician. He goes, man, I think a transformer just blew. And then 12 seconds later, another bomb goes off. And we're like, okay, that's a bomb. We just like if you hear big loud noise there, it's like, that's a construction thing happened. Something just dropped. So we're just sitting there going, what was that? So then the wheelchair comes down and somebody's got just a cut on their head. And I'm okay. And you got to ask yourself, where should I be? I got an important job at triage in the front of the tent. Like, it's a real important job. If I leave it, nobody's going to triage. I don't want to do the wrong thing. And so we wait, and then the next person comes down with their leg dangling off. And Chad and I look at each other, and we're like, we gotta go. So I text my wife and kids and say, there's a bomb, I'm going to it, and say prayers. And the irony of that is, nobody had their phone on. They lived in different places, so that's like the last message that I got, and we ran into it, and it was just a melee of what you saw. It was blood everywhere. It was really a surreal scene. It smelled like burning flesh, blood sticking everywhere. I kind of circled the crowd, kind of about this size. Kind of circled like, what do I need to do? Found two people that weren't getting help, and I was about this far from them, like that. So I could do something with this person. This person was like an older teenager, and her dad was just cradling her leg, going, somebody help her leg, somebody help her leg. And I looked around and I found there was like some fence posts that were stuffing up the barrier. So I got a couple of them, came over and kind of made a splint with, of course, nothing to tape it to her leg with. And had the dad just hold on to the splint. Had this other woman over here with a leg wound that we had a tourniquet on. And she just looked at me and said, I'm going to die right here now, and nobody's going to know where I am. Like, can't forget that. And what I didn't do is what I'm good at. Because, you're just looking, when's the next bomb going to come? What's going to happen? And then I didn't say, hey, I'm Dr. Rouzier. How you doing? What's your name? You're going to be okay. I just went into that, fight or flight mode, and this was the fight mode, and didn't introduce myself, didn't get her name. I'm never going to get that back. And people say, don't let it bother you. And it bothers me to be this Haitian versus that Haitian. That really bothered me a lot. So anyhow, it took me a long time, finally over the fact that I never knew who the people were that I helped. The people that lived in Boston and had lives in Boston actually had that really great sense of closure because they could follow people. For me, I'd be in the hospital seeing them almost every day. But I didn't get that. And interestingly, I was telling, and so the Haiti Teach the Teacher part came right after the Boston Marathon. And we were organizing it at a conference which started 2 days after the Boston Marathon. And Marlene is with me, and she's like, you can't go to Haiti because you remember how whacked out you were when you came home, and you're going to be whacked out now. Haiti's going to make this worse. So I spent, months through, the healing process of getting over the trauma of being there and always feeling like you could do more, and wishing that you can, and trying to figure out who these people were, sending out emails to people in Boston and trying to look for stuff. The healing process in people like you saved me. The Facebook, I had more UMass kids and graduates sending messages on Facebook. I had more people just reaching out to make sure I was okay. A gal named Allie, who was a senior kinesiology major, who actually shadowed me, called me the next day when I was in San Diego at this conference to just say, I know you work there all the time, are you okay? What did you do? And so kids reached out, which was really, really helpful. About a month later, I wanted to, go back to the scene of the crime. So I went back, I'd gone to a Celtics game, and with, Boston Strong shirt on. It was funny because I wanted to go there to buy a Boston Strong shirt to give to Chad, the kid who, what really bothered me then too is Chad and I make the decision to run in together, and then I lose him. And again, we don't know what's happening next. And I come back and we're like, where's Chad? It's like, I'm responsible for bringing him to the scene, and if there was another bomb or another problem, and he just had a baby. And so it took about an hour, hour and a half longer of getting everything sorted out, and he just showed up. And it was like, thank God. And it happened to be a Boston Strong, a Boston Strong t-shirt giveaway at the Celtics game. And the Dropkick Murphy song that's played for every Red Sox game and every Celtics game, shipping out to Boston because I lost my leg. Right after the national anthem, and I start to shake and convulse, and I just can't stand up. And my wife and I go, and then I had to ask myself, I've been planning this trip for a year. I'm finally on it. Am I going to endure every day, or am I going to enjoy every day? Because I can make that choice. So this is a lousy weather day. It's going to rain all day. We're going to endure it. We're going to find something in the day to enjoy. Because we have that choice. I'm like, wow, this really, this is a long book. 3 words came out of that. So I tracked them down. I looked on the internet, LinkedIn, told them my trip was coming up. We became Facebook friends, followed me along, and I told him how much this meant. I'd love to meet this guy someday. I don't know if I will, but it meant a lot to me. And along the way, this is me reading this is the Baker County Public Library, this is Baker City, Oregon, and I'm about to do a reading at a library there. This is, believe it or not, I was so stoked. We were riding through Henry, Illinois. So I got to read Henry in Henry. Does it get any better than that? So this is a group of kids in Fort Collins, Colorado. Oh, no. The Colorado State Youth Sports Program. 1, 2, 3. So the whole theme of the trip was ride, Henry, ride. And so no matter where we were, every day I'd get a ride, Henry, ride out of somebody. And
one more time, go. Ride, Henry, ride.
that was like the cutest little cowboy in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. And so at that point in time, I was joined by, I convinced my wife that the best summer of her life would be to SAG means support and gear, to drive a SAG wagon for various parts of the trip. So she SAGed us the first week to Baker City, and we carried all our gear for a couple weeks. Then she flew back to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, met up with some of her Colorado friends who drove up, and she SAGed us to Nebraska, and then we carried all our stuff, and then she drove to Ohio and carried all of our stuff while we rode from part of Ohio to Buffalo, and the rest we carried all of our stuff, which I think I like better, because everybody is nice to people on a bicycle. It's amazing, and it's true. And so this is in Hastings, Nebraska. So we read the kids. I carried the PDF of the book on my phone. So everybody that I talked to, I sent them, if they weren't giving a book away, because you can't carry books in the panniers for your bike, I would text them or email them the copy of the book so they could read to their kids and grandkids. What I found was spontaneously, I met more adults, obviously, than little kids. Or if there's somebody sitting with a little kid, I would come over, try not to stare at them, because creepy people out there, and said, hey, I wrote this kid's book, get the kids playing more, and everybody knows that kids should play more. So we had Henry on our shirt, and we're just trying to get people active. Back to the first few slides, get people moving, eat better. We were really bad examples of the eating better, but if you burn that many calories, I lost 6 pounds. If I didn't have ice cream and beer every day, I would have been emaciated. So, but we would go to these places, and people who shouldn't be eating ice cream or the crap that we ate, were eating way too much of it. So you're trying, and then a big fat person with ice cream go and say, "So, what are you doing? What's Henry?" Well, we're trying to get people to play more, be more active, and make better food choices. So we would put every day. So we had this. They would say, "Are you doing a fundraiser?" I go, "Nah, I'm not really good at raising any funds. I'm doing a health awareness raiser. We're just trying to get people to be active." And so that was our mantra every day, and it was really cool. I mean, this is what we heard over and over. This is a reasonable facsimile of a woman in a fast food store. Very nice. And she asked us what we were doing, and she said what people say all the time, which is what we have to, as doctors and public health people, have to get past these barriers. And says, all the women in my family are overweight. I work at this store, and I don't make much money, so I can't afford good food. And I work pretty hard and long. When I get home, I'm too tired to exercise. These are all valid points. They're all valid points. However, just back to the lineman, wide receiver, linebacker analogy, not everybody has to be skinny to be active and fit. It's hard to buy a lot of fresh vegetables that might go bad, but there are ways of eating frozen vegetables or there's ways around it. And you just have to, help people find that. And that's kind of part of this. We've got an internship here that sends kids into school groups and gives copies of Henry out that is trying to help break those barriers. So this is when I knew something special was going to happen. This is my 4th day. Okay, I'm climbing over. I'm in the Cascades in Oregon, just outside of Portland. Riding over the. I'm in Belknap Hot Springs in a hot springs pool, talking blah 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 blah. And this gal comes to me and says, "Did you say UMass?" I went to UMass. I graduated in 1997. I played tennis. Do you know Judy Dixon?
Oh my God.
I'm going, ooh. I just texted Judy Dixon this morning. And then I knew all these, I had weird stuff, not weird, stuff like that happened to me all the time. Just like the Boston store in Jersey, like every day. Think something happened. Yesterday, I had a great one. My wife has gotten on this, the show, TV show, This Is Us. Have you ever watched that? Yeah, so I started watching this. It's about synopsis. Family have twins, supposed to have triplets, one dies, they adopt an African American baby. They're all growing up together, flashes to different parts of their life. And we're catching up on Netflix. Find it. Anyway, there's this scene where the adult male Randall is in an office party. He finds this other person on a rooftop. This guy is going to jump off and commit suicide. And there's an envelope addressed to his daughter, Chloe. Okay? Anyway, yesterday, I'm giving a talk to high school kids about careers. Set up like this, somebody's got stuff on the table, put my hand down and look at it. It's an envelope about the same size, addressed to Chloe. So rather than talking about careers, we start off talking to kids. We bully other kids to the point sometimes where they feel like killing themselves. And tell them that story and say, I think I'm supposed to talk about this. And partly like with you guys, we have the ability every day to look somebody in the eye and be nice to them. and change their day. Also have the ability to make somebody's life miserable. So, you want to choose the right thing. So, anyhow, this is the day after the gal in the new Judy Dixon. And so, I start off and it's raining. It's a 22-mile mountain, zigzag mountain pass. Close the traffic until the next day, which is great. Beautiful scenery, wet, cloudy, and it's like power positive thinking. Think sun, think sun, think sun. Sun comes out. This is great. Peel off all my layers. It starts to rain again. And then I said, oh, no rain, no rain, no rain. And it stopped raining. And it started snowing. I realized then, man, you ought to be positive all the time. All right, here I am at the top of the Kenzie Summit. It's day 4 of the Ride for Childhood Health. Ride, Henry, ride. It's snowing. Over and out. So in there, I get to the top, I'm freezing, I can't feel my hands, and I'm about to go down to the other side, and on the other side it's 70 degrees. So I can't feel my hands, and there's this Mercedes Sprinter van. How much time do I have? Till
Like 5 minutes.
And there's a woman in this van. It's come inside. And I go inside, and there's like 7 people in this van warming up. And this nice old woman just takes my hands and warms them up, and she was literally my first angel. And I started believing in angels. And I was surrounded by these spirits for the rest of the trip that were guiding me to safety. Oh, I've got to whip through some of these. So on my helmet, I'm getting into Missoula the next day. I write on my helmet, every day is great. The next day gets better. I get into Missoula the next day. There's this big fair going on down by the river. I'm talking to this man and the woman, and I tell them that. The woman nods her head and smiles. And the guy says, how do you know the next day is going to be great? I don't get it. I just smiled and said, yeah, you don't get it. So this is one of my favorite pictures because for several reasons. This is the top. It was the highest we had climbed at the time. We ended up climbing over 10,000 foot pass at one point. This is Yorm. Yorm is from Israel. So this just is an example of people we meet on the road that we otherwise wouldn't have met. And we met Rogers. We stayed the night before with a cycling host that, in Darby, Montana. It was a big climb to come up and over. Rogers' long-lost cousin has a fishing cabin near Darby. They happen to be there. She says, they meet us there. We have dinner together, and she says, hey, we're not doing anything tomorrow. We'll carry your bags to the top of the summit. And Roger and I, by then it goes, wow, does it get any better than that? She goes, does it get any better than that? And I said, well, could you have a beer waiting for me at the top of the summit? And they go, yeah. Do you like Ballast Point Grapefruit Sculpin IPA? I go, yeah. So this is me with a Ballast Point Grapefruit Sculpin IPA at the top of the Continental Divide. It was great. Every day. It was magic. If something great hadn't happened by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I got excited because I knew something great was about to happen. These are going to whip through these. This is the Tetons. This is this crazy group ride I do in Iowa called Drag Ride. If you like crazy fun stuff, think about talking about this. And then the people of Nebraska, when we did a lot of our Henry meeting, these people had no idea who we were. They just wanted to welcome us into their home. And then we'd be out on the road and trying to think how many people in my demographic would go up to people on Harleys and have a conversation with them. Oops. My new Harley friends, ride, Henry, ride. And you find that if you engage people about your life and ask them about theirs, you can be friends with anyone. The line is, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met is just way true. And if you live your life like that, you can learn that everybody can be friends. You don't need to build a wall across anything. You don't have to be afraid of people. So, like I was saying, literally any day, you can pick that day and something great had happened. And this is the worst day of riding, right here. This is a headwind. That is a tumbleweed going past us. my wife sagging this thing. This was coming out of Fort Collins. And we had 112 miles to ride that day. I thought, I'm going to get in over 100 miles. I'm going to ride 50 miles. I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to ride back to Fort Collins with this tailwind and go to a brewery that I haven't been to, convince Arlene to come back to Fort Collins, pick me up, and then drive back to Sterling. All I could do riding into this freaking wind was to think about that fantasy, and it made me more and more and more excited. Then she meets us for lunch, and I tell her, and she said, "You're nuts! You want a ride? Get your bike in the car now." So we ended up cheating and cutting off about 50 miles of the ride because this wind was dangerous. It would blow you into trucks. So, and then, a flashback. So the ride wasn't simple. I'm in Wyoming, coming around the corner, and there is a strewn deer leg. Okay? And on my run with Chad into the Boston Marathon melee, I had to jump over Jeff Bowman's leg, which had gotten blown off. And I could not get the Boston Marathon out of my mind. All I could think of was Jeff Bowman's leg. So I downloaded his book on my phone, and I read it, and when I thought I got better a couple years ago, it just kept coming back. Trying to put it in a positive light of why is this happening? You know? But it's okay. You know, things like this, and just dealing with those things. And so I'm now in the end of our trip. We're actually making good time. And we can be home in a couple of days, but Roger's wife wants to meet us with my wife Arlene in Boston at the beach. So, oh, we have time to go to Cooperstown. So this is actually not an ice cream stand. This is the Bloomington Brewery, which is a great brewery. And so go to the brewery. A med school friend lives in Cooperstown. I'm in this ice cream stand. I had sent all these crazy texts, Facebook messaging, things like that, all year after Boston Marathon, looking for the person that I might have helped. I get this random text from one of the women from the Boston Marathon, who's an amputee, telling me that, "I'm sorry I never responded to this. I think it was a spam. I just found it." I'm the height of me dealing with all this, but I don't think I'm your woman. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. So, I'm going to end in a couple of things. One is what I call the Einstein principle. No matter when you think you're doing something, no matter how smart you think you are, you guys got to be really smart. Einstein's going to come to this room and be smarter than you. Okay? Whenever we thought we were doing something monumental, we were in Colorado. We meet this other guy. Yeah, I started my trip in San Diego. I rode across down over to Florida. I rode up to Virginia. I'm on my way back now. So he had logged about 10,000 miles. We were on our, we'd been almost 2,000 by then. It's yeah, we're not spot. So, there's just always somebody out there. And then, what I call the vasectomy analogy, years ago after my second child, I had a vasectomy, okay? So I lived in Arizona, we ran the boonies, and down to Phoenix to give a lecture, and I tried to do both things at the same time. So I got the vasectomy in the morning, and I'm giving this lecture in the evening, and I'm giving the lecture in normal light pace and walking around, sitting with an ice pack in my underwear, and only one person knew it, and he couldn't help but tell everybody else. So pretty soon the crowd, they're all going, they're all looking and laughing at me. So I'm done, any questions? They all come up and going, my husband had a vasectomy. Let me tell you all the complications that he had. Oh, I was like, thanks, don't tell me that, man, I just did this. So we're doing our bike trip, and, oh yeah, my friend did this. Yeah, he got killed on his second week of the trip. Got hit by a car. But don't tell me that. I'm planning his trip. So, anyway, into the end of the first week, this is Julie. Julie knits me this cross. Julie's part Native American, which is both kind of Christian and Native spirit. I put it in my handlebar bag here. You can see the tail of it. And so I'm just feeling the whole trip as cars go by me. I'm protected by Julie's spirits. And I feel these spirits with me. And a few days after we had this, coming down this windy canyon, and this 18-wheeler goes over a whole lane to miss me, and when Roger's a little ahead of me, canyon, concrete barrier, no shoulder, wall here, and then another 18-wheeler is coming up the canyon, and the truck driver goes, nowhere to go. He's got to come back into the lane, Roger's up ahead, and they barely miss each other, and I'm just praying, and Roger happens to have a GoPro on at the time. And I look, and they would have missed Roger. The trucks would have hit each other. The mirrors came this close to hitting each other, and they would have hit me. We did. And this is met an angel in Hastings, Nebraska. And 10 miles away from where we dipped our wheel in the Atlantic was the street Angel's Way. One day, like every day, I look at life now, I'm in my fourth quarter, and I don't know if the game's going to end. So every day, I get up wanting to know if today's the last day, how great can I make this day? So this is a really noisy truck behind me. And I'm thinking, it feels like it's really close. And I'm thinking, wow, could today be the day? And I flashed, what do I need to do for the rest of my life? This truck goes by me. And it's a Salvation Army truck. Right as I'm thinking. So the ending words are, find the greatness in your day and realize that you can make someone else's day great. And you can do that every day. And career-wise, if you choose a job you love, you will never work a day in your life. And I don't work at all. Thanks.
So we have time for questions. Maybe one question?
Anyway, if you want, you can track me down.
Where's somewhere you want to go and visit yet in the world?
Well, I want to do, well, that's what I'm doing this summer. We're driving to Montreal, flying to Barcelona to see I've been to Barcelona as a kid. When my son Anthony's coaching football in Germany, we're going to go to Germany and see him. And then we're driving to Montreal so I can ride my bike home through Vermont and make it basically a brewery tour through Vermont to get home. And then next summer, I want to do a wall-to-wall trip from the wall that the Canadians are going to put up to keep us out, and then to the wall that Trump is going to build, and I want to ride the coast down that way. Probably there's some type of Henry thing there too. So.
Thank you so much. You are absolutely beyond amazing. So.
Can we do a quick photo?